ground level here. The tube goes down and it accelerates all this time, faster, and then slows down as you get to the surface. Now it's presumably you'd need some energy on your way back up as you get maybe toward the top. Maybe some of the more technically astute people here would understand this. He's writing the trip accomplished by transforming the vehicle's gravitational potential energy at one station into kinetic energy and back into gravitational potential energy at the next station. Excess kinetic energy arising from coasting between stations having different elevations is supplied or absorbed by onboard linear motors/generators that provide supplementary propulsion or regenerative braking. This linear motor generations draw and return energy to an onboard fly-wheeled kinetic energy storage system, and so forth. The whole idea of this is that it could go as deep as 3 miles. The deeper the tunnel, the faster you can go. And his math, his calculations with that 700 miles per hour should be no problem. Pretty fast. It's faster than the speed of sound, or about there, right? So now, whether this has been built, of course, officially speaking, we have no information about this. But is it possible? Well, certainly within the clandestine lore, you don't have to be a UFO researcher to hear these stories. They're out there. The question is, are they true? Well, one of the things we can at least say is that they are feasible. They're not pure science fantasy. So, where are these underground bases? Well, certainly, as I was saying earlier, a good web search can give you a lot of information. What Richard did is just compile his own direct research into this. So he himself states it's not a comprehensive list by any means. In fact, when you really ask him, Richard, where are the bases? The first thing he would say to you is, well, they can be anywhere. They can be literally anywhere on or under the surface of the earth. One, definitely, though, is at Camp David, Maryland. We all know this is a presidential retreat. This is a direct quote from the book. Most of this facility runs like a labyrinthine anthill under Cacotin Mountain. It's operated by U.S. Navy Seabees, guarded by U.S. Marines. What Sauder wrote is that my source informed me that the underground portions of Camp David are so extensive and elaborate, and there are so many miles of secret tunnels, that it is doubtful that any one person would have a complete map of the facility in his or her mind. Fort Meade, Maryland. Well, this is NSA headquarters. We can all have no problem understanding that there are large underground facilities. In fact, officially speaking, this is not denied. And again, without going into all of the detail here, I don't really see it as necessary or feasible. His argument is that there is a huge underground maze between Fort Meade. Certainly there's a lot of massive sophisticated electronics and computers there. Lots and lots of underground bases in Maryland. There's the FEMA Alternate Underground Command Center near Olney, Maryland. Federal Emergency Management Administration, of course. A few vent pipes poking up above the ground, but sources describe a multi-level base filled with sophisticated electronics. One of the sources that Richard spoke to had been, he said, to 7 underground levels, but had no idea how deep it went. Then we have Raven Rock, also known as Site R, also known as the Underground Pentagon. This is enormous. It is the alternate underground command center of the Pentagon, possibly connected to Camp David by underground tunnel. We might want to keep in mind, too, that when you have all of these probable, let us say, underground bases, that underground tunnel systems may not be that difficult to construct to connect them when you get right down to it. Mount Weather, Virginia. This is another FEMA center. Now, this one is very well known as an underground command center dating back to the 1950s. On the surface, of the mountain. It's about 400 acres, very large. The underground base there is also very, very large. Pentagon, his argument is that the underground levels possibly go as deep as 3,500 feet. I think he's referring to the Deep Underground Command Center. U.S. Army Warrenton training stations, A and B. This is in Warrenton, Virginia. For his research on this one, Richard spoke with Fletcher Prudy. If you ever saw the movie JFK, the character of Donald Sutherland at the very end was based on Fletcher Prudy, the guy who kind of tells Jim Garrison what it's all about. Prudy also wrote a very excellent book called The Secret Team, which deals with the clandestine world of intelligence. According to Prudy, CIA presence is major at these underground bases. U.S. Army supplies cover for CIA operations deep underground. Nearby is Camp Peary in Virginia. This is another CIA underground facility. It's known as the Farm. This is said to be the main training and operations base for the CIA in the U.S. It's also very close to a U.S. Navy base, the Cheatham Annex Yorktown Naval Weapons Station. There is a high probability of an underground complex throughout the area. In fact, there is another of his sources described how the Cheatham Annex was developed in the 1940s and early 50s, I believe, using a type of quick-drying cement for underwater construction, something that you don't ordinarily think about. Doing construction in the water with cement that can just dry like that. The White House, I think there's no question that you can go deep, deep below the White House. There's a lot of stories that I'm personally familiar with concerning deep underground facilities below the White House. A very close friend, this is not just an associate of Richard's, but a friend of Richard Sauder's, told him that she was taken down to this deep layer during the 1960s, during the Johnson years. Okay, 45 years ago. She entered an elevator, was taken straight down to 17 levels. She said she was pretty sure it was 17 levels. That's pretty far down. She was then escorted down a corridor that seemed to disappear to the vanishing point, so like there was no end in sight. But other doors and corridors opened off of this one. So it was apparently, seemingly, a massive underground structure below the White House. Moving out a little further west, there's a great deal, of course. And again, this is only a partial list, and I've got a bunch of other things to discuss after this. There's the Medina Annex at Lackland Air Force Base, San Antonio. You got nuclear weapons stored there. The rumor mill, the leak mill, says that there's a very large underground base there. Very deep and very cold, whatever that might mean. We do know, with some high probability, let's say, that the NSA is running its Echelon operation out of there, among other places. The NSA is at the base, and it is widely believed by people who've researched it, who live there, and studied this, that Echelon, which is the global electronic intercept operation, is being operated out of the Medina Annex at Lackland. Then there's Fort Hood, Texas. Fort Hood's very interesting. Of course, we had the massacre at Fort Hood not long ago. But Fort Hood has a lot of other very strange connections. I actually recounted this in my book, second volume of UFOs in the National Security State. This is one of Richard's pieces of research where he talked with a source who described a 2-mile underground tunnel beneath Fort Hood to an underground area beneath what was known as Gray Airfield, Gray. And what's ironic about that, I mean, you think of Gray like Gray Alien, well, no, it's named after a man named Gray. But there is a definite UFO connection to Fort Hood, at least in terms of the rumor mill. Okay, we'll leave it at that, but claims of flying